On a cold October night in 1790, a schoolteacher rode into the fog of Sleepy Hollow and was erased from existence. But the question isn't whether he died, it's whether he ever left at all, because what happened on that bridge didn't just inspire America's most famous ghost story, it revealed something far darker about the land itself. This is the story behind the legend, and the very real disappearance that no one could explain. Sleepy Hollow. Strip away the Halloween decorations and tourist traps, and you'll find a real place with a real history, soaked in blood, superstition, and disappearances that were never solved. In 1790, this was Tarrytown, a Dutch settlement in the Hudson Valley, about 30 miles north of New York City. The people here were second- and third-generation immigrants who brought their folklore with them, stories of spectral riders, forest spirits, and things that hunted in the dark. But the old country superstitions weren't the only darkness here. This was Wek-Quaysgeek land, Lenape territory. In 1643, Dutch settlers massacred over 100 Wek-Quaysgeek people. The survivors fled, but according to their oral traditions, land remembers violence, land holds grudges, land collects debts. By 1790, the indigenous people were gone, but their sacred sites remained, burial grounds that the Dutch simply built over. The old Dutch church sits on top of one such site, and within a mile of that church was a stretch of road that even the most God-fearing colonists avoided after nightfall. They called it the Haunted Hollow. Horses would buck and refuse to move forward. Lanterns would die without explanation. And on foggy nights, people swore they could hear hoofbeats, riders that weren't there, something hunting in the dark. This was the world Ichabod Crane entered in the autumn of 1790, a man who didn't believe in ghosts. That was his first mistake. The real Ichabod Crane wasn't the fool from the story. He was an educated schoolteacher from Connecticut, in his late 20s, ambitious and desperately trying to climb the social ladder. His ticket up? Katrina Van Tassel, the 18-year-old daughter of one of the wealthiest farmers in the region. But Ichabod had competition. Abraham Van Brunt, nicknamed Brom Bones, a local boy who'd publicly threatened Ichabod at least twice. One witness recalled Brom saying he'd drive the Yankee schoolmaster back to Connecticut in a pine box. Small towns don't forget words like that. On October 30th, 1790, the Van Tassel family hosted their annual harvest party. Ichabod was there, so was Brom Bones. As the night wore on and the alcohol flower, the gathering did what all gatherings in Sleepy Hollow did. It turned to ghost stories, and Brom Bones told the story of the Headless Hessian, a German mercenary decapitated by a cannonball during the Revolution, buried without his head near the church, and now condemned to ride every night, searching for what was taken from him. Brom claimed he'd encountered the ghost himself near the church bridge and had barely escaped. He described it in vivid detail, the thundering hooves, the cape billowing black, the missing head, and the feeling of being hunted by pure malice. The entire room fell silent, and Ichabod Crane was pale as milk. The party ended around midnight. Ichabod had to ride home through the Haunted Hollow. There was no other route. He borrowed a plow horse named Gunpowder and left alone. Around 12:30 a.m. on October 31st, All Hallows Eve, the moon was full but obscured by clouds. Fog rolled thick off the river. And then, 3 separate households along that road reported hearing something terrifying. They heard horses. Not one horse, 2. One set of hoofbeats was steady, rhythmic, but then a second set joined in. Faster, heavier, pursuing. Both sets accelerated into a full gallop, moving toward the bridge at breakneck speed. And then they heard a scream, a man's scream, not of pain, but of absolute primal terror, the kind that makes your blood freeze, the kind that means someone has seen something no human should see. And then complete silence. The hoofbeats stopped. The scream ended as if cut with a knife. The fog swallowed everything. At dawn, a farmer found Gunpowder near the church, lathered in sweat, eyes wild with terror. His saddle had been twisted completely around, something that only happens when a horse bucks violently or its rider is torn off with force. Both stirrups were snapped clean through. 50 yards from the bridge, they found Ichabod's hat, lying in the middle of the road, and next to it, a shattered pumpkin. A search party of 20 men combed the woods for 3 days. They dragged the river, checked every ravine within 5 miles. They found nothing. No body, no blood, no torn clothing. But they did find tracks, 2 sets approaching the bridge. Gunpowder's prints were erratic, panicked. But the other set was perfectly straight, impossibly deep in the soil, as if the horse making them weighed far more than any normal animal, or as if it wasn't a horse at all. Both sets of tracks stopped at the bridge. Gunpowder's tracks picked up on the other side, but the second set simply ended at the bridge's edge, as if whatever made them had vanished into thin air or descended below the earth. One searcher wrote in his diary, "The tracks ended as if the rider had been lifted into the air. I do not pretend to understand what I saw, and the pumpkin hadn't just fallen. It had been smashed with tremendous force, fragments scattered up to 15 feet away." Theory 1. Murder. Suspicion immediately fell on Brom Bones. He had motive, jealousy, and rage. He'd made public threats. He had the physical strength. And here's the damning part. Brom Bones married Katrina Van Tassel less than 3 months after Ichabod disappeared. 3 months. The local magistrate questioned Brom multiple times. His alibi was that he'd left the party early with friends who vouched for him. But Brom's farm was directly along Ichabod's route home. And in a tight-knit community where everyone's related, alibis from friends don't mean much. But if Brom killed Ichabod, where's the body? You can't just bury someone without neighbors noticing. The ground was freezing. Digging would have been difficult, noisy. Every conceivable hiding place within 10 miles was searched. Nothing. And years later, when Washington Irving interviewed old-timers for his story, Brom laughed knowingly when asked about Ichabod and said,
"The hollow takes what it wants."
Theory 2. The supernatural. But here's what most people don't know. Ichabod wasn't the only disappearance. Church records show at least 4 other men vanished within 5 miles of that bridge between 1780 and 1795. All traveling alone at night. All disappeared completely, leaving only horses and personal effects. 4 cases, 0 bodies, 0 resolutions. The church sexton noted in the registry margins, "The hollow takes them. We do not ask where they go." This was land soaked in violence, built on desecrated burial grounds. The Lenape believed in the Matantu, shape-shifting entities that punished those who violated sacred boundaries. The Dutch believed in revenants, in places where the veil between worlds grew thin. What if something genuinely supernatural hunted that road? What if the land itself was collecting debts for centuries of bloodshed? Theory 3. Human predator. What if there was a human predator operating in Sleepy Hollow? Someone who realized the local ghost stories provided perfect cover for murder. The post-revolutionary period was chaotic. Thousands of displaced soldiers, criminals hiding in forests, a barely functional legal system. Better to have people fear ghosts than start looking too closely at who was really riding those roads after midnight. So what happened to Ichabod Crane? Murder? A human predator? We'll never know. And maybe that's the point. Because Sleepy Hollow doesn't give up its secrets. The town thrives on its mystery now. Tourist dollars and ghost tours that treat real tragedy as entertainment. But talk to the old families, and they'll tell you not to walk those roads alone after dark. Not because of Washington Irving's fiction, but because of something older. If this story got under your skin, hit that subscribe button. I've got an entire series on American legends based on true events. Drop your local legends in the comments. Your town could be next. Stay curious. And if you ever hear hoofbeats behind you on a dark road, don't look back.